Hello, and welcome to our first podcast on The Great Debate with your host, Alexis Groves. Today, we have Dylan Coleman and Kaitynn McKinsey. Our topic for today is the school system. What are your guys' opinions about the school system being a complete mess?
Well, you already stated that it's a complete mess, so I definitely agree that there are things that could be touched upon. It is definitely better than it used to be, but I find many aspects of it troubling at best.
Yeah, there's one of my bigger problems with it is that 100 years ago, we were in this same exact system during the industrial age, which was teaching kids how to work in factories. Now it is present day where the future is expanding, and we gotta be like, hey, we're doing more than just working in factories. We're exploring the world. We're creating new things. So like, why do we still have the same old system that was made for people following orders left and right and knowing exact time schedules?
I agree very much. And I find it very unfortunate that in a lot of ways, people who are better off or have higher income families are definitely treated better than people who aren't. For instance, the cafeteria. If you can't afford a normal lunch, sometimes you don't get a normal lunch. At my elementary school, if you didn't have enough lunch money or your parents couldn't put lunch money in your account, they gave you 2 pieces of bread with a cheese in between and milk. That was all you got. Sometimes they wouldn't check your account until after you had gotten your food, you'd sat down and you started eating. I actually witnessed teachers coming up to little kids, taking their trays, dumping them, and then getting them new food that was worse than what they originally had, which doesn't make sense because why would they waste perfectly good food just so they can give someone else food that makes them feel bad? The whole thing is based on the fact that they want to punish the children for their parents not having enough money, as if the children could pay for the money themselves. Especially when you consider the fact that prisoners get food for free. Prisoners get food.
That's a whole different topic entirely.
Well, yes, but I'm trying to make the point that they could get better jobs, get money to pay for their food, for their necessities, and then the people at school who have little to no income or are just above the line where they say, we're paying for your lunch now, if people who are just above that, whose parents still don't want to take care of them, can't get lunch or can't get food because they don't have the money, yet we're forced to be here.
Yeah, and that's completely awful, but I wouldn't say all schools are like that because, before I moved to Wyoming, my old school, they were pretty generous with, granted, it was roughly it was the population of Thunder Basin High School, but it was kindergarten through high school. It was a much smaller school, but if it was pretty generous with if your parents couldn't pay for lunch, they'd just give it to you for free.
Mm-hmm.
And if you made the right, if they check if you had a low if you were a low to medium low income household, then they wouldn't make you pay for food. But if you were above most standards for income, I wouldn't say high income, but if you were pretty middle class income, then they would say, all right, well, if you can pay, we can tell, so you're going to pay. But they were really generous with the fact that it's like, hey, obviously don't have the money, you're a kid, there's no way you can get a job, especially at 16, 15, well, maybe 16, but 13s and below, 13-year-olds and below can't really get a job. So my old school was, one to stand up for that. And it's weird that not all schools would adapt such a thing. Mm-hmm. It's, at this point, kids are going, hungry a lot because they just can't eat lunch. They go home and they barely have a dinner too sometimes. If they're that low income, then it's just there's obviously a way to make change, but they're choosing not to almost.
There's also the fact that a lot of people live in neglectful families who feel as if they can't reach out. And you do get your food paid for here if you have a low enough income, but there are some people I know someone whose parents are divorced, her mom pays for her lunch, and her dad pays for some other necessities. Her mom can't afford to pay her lunch account. Her dad can, but they go off her dad's budget, and so sometimes she doesn't even eat. Some work on the whole lunch thing. I especially feel that if you don't have enough money, you should be given the same food everyone else is getting, because what is that teaching them? That because their parents made a mistake and their parents can't pay for their food, that they're less than?
And, the food's definitely a problem. Another problem I want to talk about is the gap between students and teachers. And obviously there's an age gap because that's just, they're going to be adults. But a lot of the older teachers don't seem to understand. They say to us, well, this is what's going to happen in college. This is how it's going to be. But that's just how it was in their college. Like my sister was, before we moved, she still goes to college in Oklahoma. But her teachers were really hard on her, and they made her do the hardest things, to say hey, this is how college is going to be. It's going to be tough. It's going to feel like it's impossible, but you're going to have to push through and you're going to have to man up and you have to be a better person. And then my sister went to college and it was the exact opposite. She said high school was probably the toughest year of her life. College, she can just breeze through. Teachers now still believe that college is the exact same as it was. And to be fair, I can see where they're coming from because high school is the exact same as it was when they were kids. College has been evolving and changing, and I think the idea of class periods, instead of having set times for set things, you have to stay at this building for 6 to 8 hours at a time, and you have to go to these classes in this order, and you get small breaks in between, that sounds like a prison sentence.
Thank you guys so much for coming. You guys made some very good points. This has been The Great Debate with Dylan Coleman and Kaitynn McKinsey.